Let's move into the 90-second presentation. So for this one, you're going to imagine now that you're an employee of Hugo Boss and you encounter an executive who asks you why sustainable development is important and how that is linked to the team's topic. You have 90 seconds in which to convince the executive why this needs to be addressed. And only one team member will do this part. So whoever that is, you can, okay, Paul, you can begin whenever you're ready, and I will start the timer at that point.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for listening to my pitch as a member of Hugo Boss's Sustainability Committee. It is empowering to see all that we've done on a sustainable level, from our Less Water initiative to our actions to reduce our impacts on climate change. However, we must go further than this. We need to improve our labor practices by supporting our workers and addressing the issues that have come up in the past, including forced labor allegations and worker health negligencies. With major allegations regarding unsafe working conditions at our supplier factories, this poorly reflects on our corporate image. Now is the time to do better on the social aspects of sustainability, not just for the environment, but for the over 120,000 workers along our value chain. We must fulfill the commitments in our mission statement and set an example to the fashion industry to improve the labor practices globally, because we are an industry leader. Labor productivity has increased consistently since 2009, and wages and treatment should reflect those changes. We need to support our workers by eliminating informal employment and increasing transparency in our auditing processes. Not only will this increase compliance along our global supply chain, but it will ensure that we appeal to a new generation of sustainable consumers. It's time for us at Hugo Boss to do well by doing good. Thank you.
Okay, great job. So take a deep breath and relax, because now you're done. First, I want to say great job to the team. I know that participating in this event is a lot of work, and you have to do a lot of research, a lot of preparation. And everything that you came to the table with today was, I could tell it was honed, it was polished, it was very well done. So I know that there's a lot of work leading up to getting to this point. So thanks for doing all of that. I took some notes during the presentations, and happy to use this time to give you some feedback in case that would be helpful. And also, if any of you has any questions for me, happy to address those as well. So your team's presentation, it was really outstanding for a number of reasons. This 10-minute scenario is a little bit more challenging in a sense than like yesterday's, where you have the slides and the visual aids that you can use. Without any of that, you've got 10 minutes of just talking to somebody on a topic that can at times be pretty complex. And so it's not easy really to boil that down and think of a message that you can deliver only verbally and have your listener keep up with you and understand where you're going. And one of the excellent things that you guys did was this 3 E's approach. And I was not in the room yesterday when you presented, so this was all new to me, which can make it, even that much harder. But you started at the very beginning with the 3 E's, and you said them: evaluate, enact, elevate. And so I wrote those down, and then I heard them multiple times throughout the presentation, and that was critical, because that really gives me a roadmap to what your solution is, how you've analyzed it and broken it down, and I know where to fit everything into your bigger picture. If you don't provide that kind of roadmap, then it's just too much of a flood of information, and I can't place any of it very easily. And this is really a sophisticated skill that we don't always see a lot. And so I was just so impressed that you did that. So that's definitely something to take away from this and continue using that technique when you're giving presentations like this. It's really, really helpful. One of the other things, and you guys did really well on this, but one of the nice things about this competition and how it places you in these scenarios where you're supposed to be role playing is that you can really think, well, what would it be like to walk into the boardroom of Hugo Boss or one of these companies? And a lot of times the instinct is, well, I'm doing a presentation, so I'm gonna tell it like it is, and say why all these things are wrong and something needs to be done about it. But in real life, you probably wouldn't go into a boardroom and tell it like it is, like exactly, right? Because you don't want to go in there and start lecturing them about how evil they are. That's not going to make them like you very much or be receptive to what your proposals are. So you definitely want to look at it from their perspective. And I could tell that you did that. You gave some nods to some of the things that Hugo Boss is doing. They've put a code out, they've got policies out, they've made statements. One, little nuanced thing that you might consider is incorporating, it's going to sound silly, but incorporate use of the word alleged, right? Hugo Boss has done these things, but they're just window dressing. You probably wouldn't really tell the board member that all the work that the company has done is just window dressing, but you might say it could be critiqued by others as window dressing, or they might say it's, allegedly with window dressing. And same thing with the issues that are happening in the supply chain. And, this is delicate. This is a hard thing really to talk about, actually. And I have to have these you could probably see on my background, the ethics, and that's my role at Western Digital. And we're in the technology industry. In your research, you probably uncovered a lot about Xinjiang and the cotton. And, we're grappling with the same issue on chips and things like that, right, in the technology industry. And so you're right, companies don't have direct control over their suppliers and their supply chain. They have position and influence, but what can you really do, right? And so to come in and say, well, your supply chain, all these harms are happening and people are being abused. It's a sensitive thing to talk about. And so just consider it from the company's perspective of how they might want to hear about that. I mean, certainly nobody wants any of that stuff in their supply chain, but you don't want to make the board members feel like it's their fault. I mean, what you want to do is persuade them that there's an opportunity here to do something good, to set a standard. And I liked what you said about Hugo Boss has issued statements, which is a good start, but that it's important to align statements with values so that they can't be criticized as being hypocritical. So I think pitching things in that way is a really good and, quite frankly, a sophisticated technique that I was very pleased to see you come to the table with. That you talked about it in terms of opportunity for the company, which is really, companies do have these moral and ethical obligations, but there are also fiduciary duties. You do have to return value to your investors and your shareholders. And so anytime that you can tie your initiatives or what you're trying to convince a company to do to those responsibilities, that's also very compelling way to get your point across and to get your initiative taken seriously. And again, going back to the 3 E's, I think you had like 2 concrete proposals under each one. And a lot of those proposals, I did hear those business opportunities there, the things that as a business person made me think, this is compelling. This is why it'll be good for Hugo Boss. You talked about like quantifying the labor impacts so that we can include it in or next to our disclosures. And you said the reason to do that is because investors care. And so that's compelling to me, right? I want the investors to like my company. I want the consumers to like my company. So any kind of research like that that you can point out that investors make decisions based on this, or consumers make decisions where to shop, whose products to buy based on this, those are great business justifications to hook into.